Hey comrades, what's up? Hope everyone's doing good. We're here to talk about some X-Men. We're on to the Dracula Arc. Yup. Good stuff. Anyway, so go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we're going to start with Uncanny X-Men number 158. This one actually has nothing to do with Dracula. We kind of pick up where we left off before all the Dazzler fun. We have Carol Danvers. She's just fighting members of the Starjammers. She's doing pretty good. Corbo's there, and he's examining her. And he talks about how like her mutant powers or her superpowers got taken away, but some of the other stuff that happened, like with her genes and all that good stuff, that's all still there. And so that she's still kind of like fast and strong and has like a little more toughness, but that she doesn't have like the super strength. We then switch over to Colossus and Ileana and Kitty Pryde, and she does a little recap of like the previous episode and Colossus getting damaged and injured and stuff. And then we head over to Moira, who's kind of watching Corbo and Carol and all that stuff when a Nightcrawler shows up and says it's time. So Oracle, the premier telepath in the what are they called, the Lilandra's like people. God damn, I don't know, my stuff like slips into my mind so much. Let's see if it says it here. Anyway, she's spent a full day in meditation, and she's going to try to see what's wrong with Professor X. And we know that it's the Brood because we see it. We literally see his face being split with a Brood and like a Brood embryo and all this stuff. But Oracle just starts going crazy, and Wolverine has to jump in the way and take Sard of the blast and like blows up part of the room, so they start fixing it. And then Oracle's like, oh my god, I'm never facing with such psychic defenses, and like something's definitely wrong, but I can't figure it out. We then switch back over to Colossus and crew, and everyone's kind of moving out there because Kitty lets them know that the X-Men are on TV. And we see Senator Kelly talking some Robert Kennedy talking some mad shit about the X-Men and the stuff they did and how they're a menace. And the British guy who's like interviewing him is even like, hey, they saved your life. And he's like, irrelevant. Fuck those guys. and so then Kitty's like, we need to hack into like the government systems and erase the X-Men so that we can all be left alone. And Carol's like, or Aurora's like, can you do that? And Kitty's like, the Starjammers can. Speaking of the Starjammers, we flip back over to, what is it, El Diablo or something? Yep. Rio Diablo, which is in like New Mexico or something, where Alex Summers and Lorna Dane are hanging out and living like their best life. They're cooking dinner and getting all kissy-potamus when Cyclops shows up. And who did he bring? Christopher Summers, their dad. Wow. It's a great reunion. Moving forward to the Pentagon, we have Aurora showing up in like a nice dress, and then Wolverine and Carol both dressed to the nines with their like military ranks. I think Wolverine's a captain in the Canadian Army, if I remember correctly, and then Carol is a colonel. Well, she explains that she was never actually a colonel; she was a major. But then on some of the special operations missions she had to go on, they moved her to colonel, so that she could do her job better. And then as they're trying to get in, Wolverine gets flagged by like the metal detector, and he's like, "Yeah, I gotta." And then Aurora's like, "Oh shit, he's gonna freak out." And he's like, "Here you go. Here's my medical card saying I have metal in my body." And they're like, "Oh, okay." So almost immediately we see Rogue, and Carol immediately bumps into Rogue, and then battle commences. So there's a lot of slapping, punching around. Rogue's super strong, so Wolverine's trying to get her, and then he kisses her. Oh no, sir, she kisses him, takes some of his powers. He gets knocked out a little bit. Carol pulls out a gun and starts firing it, but she's got like Carol's powers, so the gun's not going to do anything. Aurora uses weather magic, tells Carol to like keep going with the mission to eliminate their information from the government computers. She's going to go take care of Rogue, so she grabs Wolverine and takes off. Little to Carol Danvers' understanding, Raven Darkholme, who is Mystique's like hidden Pentagon or governmental like position or identity, is watching her, and she's like, aha, and I'm going to do something about this. So she picks up a gun and starts following Carol. Rogue, Wolverine, and Storm start having a battle. They summon in Nightcrawler, who is waiting outside. They start wrestling around and fighting. Rogue gets beat up a little bit, but she's like Superman, right? Because of Carol Danvers' powers. And eventually she grabs on to Storm and gets her powers, and then that just goes crazy. Meanwhile, Carol gets into like the area where she needs to hack into the system, and Raven follows and then turns into Nick Fury to kind of like surprise her, which she does. Carol's like, do, and then it's like, hello, and she turns around and it's like, Fury? And then she get Fury, or Mystique shoots her like right in the head, but like it just grazes her, obviously, because she's still around. Back with Rogue, and again, we just kind of bounce back and forth. Then back with like the rest of the crew, they're fighting Rogue some more. Carol didn't actually die. She pretends to be down so that she can trick Mystique and starts fighting her and like beats the shit out of her, knocking her out completely, returning her to her Mystique form. And she thinks about killing her, but she's like, no, I will not. Meanwhile, Aurora uses like tornado magic to take Rogue and like send her the fuck out of there. Mystique gets captured by the military police because obviously Colonel's like, come arrest this bitch and take it off while Carol finishes deleting not just the records of the X-Men, but her records as well. The whole place is like up in chaos, but the X-Men are able to get out and they're waiting at the car for Carol, who rolls up and is like, all right, I'm one of the X-Men now. Let's do this. So pretty good. And that leads us right into 159, which is the so there's like 3 issues that deal with Dracula. This one, the annual, and then the What If. So this is we start off and the X-Men like show up to like have a party with Misty. I think Storm is not. Yeah, with Misty, who's got a new roommate, whose name is Harmony Young. Who's a model, and so she's like, holy shit, sorry, I didn't realize this was going to be a thing, and like, oh no, we're sorry. Emma apologizes. Colossus and Nightcrawler are kind of flirting with her because she's a supermodel. Kitty's getting jealous. Kitty's got to go visit her parents. They're in Chicago. Yeah, so they're in Chicago visiting. That's why they came to visit Misty, because I guess she's in Chicago now, and then she's got a new roommate, Harmony. Okay, there it'll make sense. So Aurora and Kitty transform into, or they change clothes into just regular clothes so that Kitty can go to her parents' house and hang out with them and say hi, or one of her parents because they're divorced. And they head off to do that. Back at the Rio Diablo, we get Alex and Summer. They're just like fucking around in the desert, blowing up rocks and shit. Meanwhile, Christopher's being charming at home, where Lorna's like trying to cook everyone dinner. And they're just like chit-chatting about what his plans are next. And he's going to return to space. He's enjoyed his time at Earth, but he's been gone so long that he just can't handle it anymore. And his sons are like, what about us? And he's like, well, if you want, maybe you can come. Then back with the X-Men, who are, Nightcrawler's putting like a hard flirt on Misty. Or not Misty, on Harmony Young. And it's like, come on, bro, you got Amanda Sefton. What the fuck you doing? Anyway, they get a call, and it's Kitty, and she's like, oh, hey, I have a question for Aurora. And they're like, Aurora's not here. And she's like, what? Nani desu ka? She left me a while ago. I've been here for like ever. And they're like, what, Ro? And where's Aurora? She got attacked by a mugger, supposedly. We all know it's Dracula because it's the Dracula Arc. Over at a hospital, there's a young woman who's been brought in because she has a lack of blood. And then there's like a sassy doctor, and Wolverine and Colossus head in there to like check and see what's going on. And they head into Aurora's room, and everyone's like super concerned, and she got attacked, and then she's just like fucking chilling, and she's like, I'm sorry, I got a mugger. And then she sees like these lights outside the window, and it's like, And the doctor is very suspicious, but that's the last we see of her. Colossus and Logan hang out with her, or Peter and Logan hang out with her for a while, and then they leave. She starts sweating and becoming like very concerned, and finally she opens the window to dun dun dun. Somebody we don't know. It's obviously Dracula. Later on, Kitty comes in, and she to the hospital is like, hey, where's Aurora? And she's like, she's over there, but she's not looking too good, kiddo. I'm sorry, she might not make it through the night. Kitty's like, no, I refuse. And she runs in there and opens the window to the outside. And Aurora's like, oh, it hurts. And she looks completely emaciated. It's pretty good drawings. And then she has got this like crazy scarf around her neck that has a big D on it. And Kitty's like, what the fuck is that? And she's like, none of your damn business. Boyfriend gave it to me. And she's like, boyfriend? The fuck? And then Kitty wants to know more, but then Aurora like sends her out of there, and Kitty storms off and is upset. And then she opens the window again, and this time we officially see Dracula. Dun dun dun. And then Kitty comes in. Oh, before this, Aurora saw the Star of David on Kitty's chest, and she like freaked out because it's a religious symbol that she believes in. So Kitty comes back, and she's wearing like Indiana Jones gear, and she has a cross. And Dracula's like, the fuck is that? You're not a Christian. And then he like goes to grab her by the neck, and he's like, oh, my hand. He's like, oh, you go to David, Star David, Hebrew. I'm getting the fuck out of here. So he leaves, and Aurora follows after. And then everyone comes in, and she explains the whole situation with Dracula and how she should have said something earlier, and yada yada. Anyway, they somehow track down his castle in like uptown New Chicago. And Dracula attacks them with like beasts, like mice and wolves and stuff. And Dracula's there, so they're fighting. Dracula's super strong, so they're fighting that and getting punched. And he's dodging around with like mist, and it's like a shonen battle anime, right? So they fight, and then Wolverine's like, I know what to do, and he makes a cross with his claws. And Dracula's like, you don't have any belief. And Nightcrawler's like, but I do. And so he makes a cross out of sticks, and Dracula like freaks the fuck out and starts casting lightning everywhere. Meanwhile, Kitty is like snuck back over to the house, and she finds a casket. She's like, no, Aurora, I will do what I have to do. And she opens it up with like a stake, and then she pours like some holy water in there when Aurora's not in there. But then she gets zapped by Aurora, who's like, aha, I am fully a vampire now. There's nothing you can do. And so she goes to like get a stake to attack Aurora, but then at the last minute she's like, I refuse. I'm not going to hurt my like mommy, mommy Aurora. Back outside, we see Wolverine and Colossus and Nightcrawler continuing to fight Dracula. And it looks like they're doing a pretty good job, and then zap! They get zapped real good. Because Aurora's back, and it's like, oh no, she's in her full possession. But aha, she's not. She starts attacking Dracula because she's overcome some of her like vampire-ness, I guess. And he transforms into like a bat a werebat, and they start fighting. They're flying around Chicago, they crash into a restaurant. They're fighting some more. He's like, you'll burn to my thrall, and she's like, I've never been to your thrall. Something dumb thing. She like resists his like compulsion magic, and then he's like, all right, well, if you won't do it, I'm gonna grab this bitch. So and he calls her a cow. Like, I'll rip this cow's throat apart. So he grabs it, and Aurora's like, I will not kill. I refuse to be a part of any killing. And Dracula's like, oh, hoo, hoo, hoo. And she's like, I will also not be I'm not a slave to you. I'll never be a slave. Doesn't matter if I'm a vampire or not. And then Dracula's like, I'm really turned on right now. I don't know how I feel about this whole situation, but you're like a queen. I wish we could be together. Maybe someday. I'm gonna leave. And she's like, we'll track you down. And he's like, good fucking luck. That's literally what he says. Anyway, as dawn approaches, Kitty sees that Aurora is able to exist in daylight, so she's not fully transformed into a vampire. Everyone like hugs it out and is super happy and pleased by the whole situation. They head back to Harmony Young's, and then right as things are kind of getting settled, they're having a good time, and Wolverine's having his morning beer, his morning brewski. Moira McTaggart calls and it tells Aurora that things have gone tits up for Professor Xavier and they gotta get back. Right, meow. Continuing our Dracula adventure, we go forward to the king-size annual number 6 of the X-Men. And this starts off, we're at a Bard College with a nice young woman who is Rachel Van Helsing, yes, of Bram Stoker's fame. And she's teaching and doing whatever she's got to do. She heads home and, it's Dracula! And then we switch over to the X-Men. And Kitty is losing her shit. Why? Because her parents are officially getting divorced. No one understands her. She's a teenage girl. She's super mad. She's looking fucking hot as shit in this one. It's like really when she starts becoming like a stone cold babe. She storms off, literally, tells Storm she's not her mother, throws stuff in her room, cries that she hates her parents, and then we see a shadowy form above her right before the night begins. Then at midnight, we see her awaken, and there's Aurora, and she's a vampire now, again. And so she bites Kitty, then she goes around, she bites Cyclops, she bites Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler. She's saying all this crazy shit, and then dun dun dun, she transforms into like a crazy bat monster and flies to Dracula, and they make sweet fucking love. But no! Just kidding. It's a dream. Aurora's freaking out. She goes to check on Kitty to make sure she's okay. Kitty is watching her because she's secretly possessed. And so Aurora at that point is feeling the lure of Dracula and is like, I need to go. So she flies off, and then Kitty wakes up and is like, all right, good. And then she heads to find Peter studying or drawing. He's writing a history thesis, and Kitty goes in there and flirts with him, and he's like, this is inappropriate. And then like, dun, 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 we head over to Aurora, who is flied out to somewhere in Britain. Does it say exactly where? No, it just says England. I thought it said Cornwall somewhere. Anyway, so she rolls in, calls out to Dracula, and then we see Rachel Van Helsing, and now she's a vampire, and she's the consort of Dracula, and she presents this fine meal with like cheese underneath, like just like a block of cheese underneath like a crystal like dome, and like a whole turkey, and it's like, what is this crazy meal that got drawn? Dracula shows up. They talk about how she's going to do what he says. He needs her for something that he can't do. Knocks her out. Then she kind of wakes up. Her and Rachel talk about how she's a Van Helsing and she's an enemy of Dracula. Dracula like leaves and then comes back and then like screams some more. And then he drags her and puts her in this like sweet like rogue costume. Like it's all green and has like the pouches. It's very form-fitting, very what do you call it? Fan servicey. So, and then he takes her to this castle. Is this the castle? It's in Pendaro. Just somewhere else in Britain, apparently. Do you understand the castle? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, anyway. So she goes there, and she sneaks into this place and, like, cracks it open with her, like, thief magic, and then gets shot in the back by Kitty. And it's not really Kitty. So then they fight a little bit. Colossus rolls in. He calls Aurora a storm witch. They start fighting. Aurora freezes him, and then... Oh, I forgot to say, the whole reason they came here is because there's a book that Dracula wants to get that will like destroy all vampires or whatever. And then at this juncture, Kitty runs out of this, and this is like, this place is on sacred ground, so Dracula can't come here. But then Kitty runs out and she's like, I got it, I can turn everyone to dust. I'm so excited. And then she like takes off. And meanwhile, the guards at like this museum start shooting at Aurora. And she crashes through a window and she's like, I am done. I am tapped out. So Dracula grabs her and they fly off. She's then having a dream where she's back in Cairo, right? And she's wearing like an outfit and a scarf of Dracula. She sees her mother and father, tries to warn them about what's going on. The plane comes in, it crashes, she's buried alive, and then she screeches, and Dracula like pulls her out of a coffin. And she was in a coffin just like healing. She's not a vampire or nothing. She tests it. She's like licks her her teeth to see if she's got fangs, and then her and Dracula get into it. It's like a little fight. He like slaps her around a little bit. Rachel comes out, starts yelling at her. Dracula's about to bite Aurora to like seal her as a vampire because she failed him once. And the X-Men roll in. That's right, the X-Men. Wolverine, Cyclops, and Nightcrawler come rolling in. Nightcrawler stabs, or Dracula tries to throw a spear at Colossus. Nightcrawler grabs a spear and stabs Dracula with it. Rachel comes out, pulls the spear out, starts fighting with the X-Men. She's using all her like vampire magic powers. At that point, Colossus and Kitty roll in. So now we have like the battle of three teams. They start fighting Dracula. Dracula's going back and forth with them. Rachel turns into a wolf, tries to eat Cyclops, and finally Dracula's like, nopes the fuck out. He like takes off, and then Kitty, possessed Kitty, goes to follow him. Colossus goes too, but then Wolverine tries to grab him to stop him. Colossus knocks Wolverine and then gets smashed with this like trap. But obviously he's Colossus in iron form, so he'll be okay. The X-Men then reveal that whatever's going on with Kitty, she set off like some crazy alarm, and then alerted them. And then they followed her over here. They heard about the museum thing, and then were able to track her over to this castle because why not? We need story to happen. So he then or something, and then Cyclops says, "No, I'll take care of it." He blasts a hole all the way down to like the secret basement. They all hop down and they find Colossus and Dracula like battling it out. So then Wolverine jumps in, starts fighting, and then he gets bitten by Wolverine. Or no, Dracula bites Wolverine, and so then Wolverine starts fighting the other X-Men. Meanwhile, Aurora it runs off, and she starts fighting with Rachel. They have like a heart-to-heart conversation about Rachel pulling, like, being her true self and like not giving herself up just because of like vampirism or whatever. Back over we have Colossus and Wolverine now fighting. Dracula's like yelling at him, and then Kitty comes running in with the book and starts casting the spell, which is going to destroy all vampires. And right before she finishes, a Nightcrawler knocks it out of her hand, and he says something about like, if you'd use that dark magic, you would have lost your soul. And then whoever's possessing Kitty's like, that's a good point. I don't give a fuck. And so then Aurora starts fighting with Kitty, and then Dracula talks about how she's possessed, and then everyone starts kind of like waking up, like Wolverine and Aurora and Colossus, and then the girl who's possessing Kitty transforms into her, and she's a vampire too, and she keeps calling Dracula her father, and then Dracula calls her his daughter, and then slaps the shit out of her, and then he gets a spear in the chest from Rachel Van Helsing, and he's like, "How? You have to obey me." And she's like, "No, Mo." And so she has a sign of the cross to burn him away, and then mentions that to kill him completely, we have to cut off his head. And right before Wolverine's about to like cut off the head, the whole building starts collapsing on itself. So everyone runs away as the building like falls into the ocean. At that juncture, Rachel's just like standing on a cliff overlooking like the moors as the sun's about to come up. She then she then hands over a stake to Aurora and is like, "Please kill me. Being burned to death by the sun is painful and slow." And then Aurora's like, "I'll do it." And Wolverine's like, "Hell no, I'll do it." Like, I'm a killer. You're not. It's good old Wolverine. So then he like talks to her a little bit, makes sure that's what she actually wants. And then he grabs her and hugs her in like a nice comforting embrace and stabs her right in the heart with the stake. And then she burns to nothing. Then he like cuts her head off, right? Because to like seal the thing, or she'll be burned away by the sun at that point. Then we get Kitty like laughing and standing around, and she's like, "Oh," ho, ho, ho. And then they're like, "Kitty," and she's like, "I am not Kitty. I am the darling daughter of Dracula. I am Lilith. Nothing can affect me like vampire weakness. I have no vampire weaknesses. My whole point of existence is to destroy Dracula. But I'm done with this shit. So you can have Kitty back. Bye." And then she just like takes off. And then she talks about how Wolverine and Storm haven't lost enough blood, and they'll have like possession of themselves, and that Colossus didn't lose enough blood either or something. So it's like they're not going to be vampires anymore. And then we get the ending. We just see Wolverine like watching the sun rise, and he's like smoking his stogie. And Aurora walks up, and Wolverine's like, "Hey, how's the kid?" And then Storm is like, she's confused, but nothing, we're X-Men. It's always fucking like this. And then she's like, "I'm glad it's over." And then Wolverine is like, "Is it?" Dun, dun, dun. But that's the end. So we're going to wrap up the Dracula arc here with a what if, of course. So we throw these what ifs in. So this is What If Volume 2, number 24, which came out in, I don't know, April of some year. And this one is What If Wolverine was the Lord of Vampires? And it's just as silly as it sounds. So the Watcher does like a recap of all the stuff that's been going on in the past with these guys. And then instead of Aurora, like them defeating Aurora or whatever, they win, and then Dracula immediately turns Wolverine, Colossus, and Nightcrawler into vampires, and then Wolverine like overpowers his like willpower of Dracula because he has such strong willpower, and then he kills Dracula, and he's like, "I am now the Lord of the Vampires." And then they go and they track down a bunch of other X-Men and mutants and turn them all into vampires, and then there's like vampire plague, and then Doctor Strange is like, "Oh, I gotta take care of this. I gotta go get this like magic spell from like the Darkhold." But little does he realize that Wolverine turned Juggernaut into a vampire as well. So Juggernaut goes and beats the shit out of him, and then they throw him to like the crocodiles so that he can't be resurrected as like a vampire because Wolverine learned his lesson from when he became a vampire, I guess. And then it's just like more like random bullshit about like, oh, they spread their powers all over the world and kept doing stuff, and like, they all these other superheroes were transformed into vampires and shit. And America's like, maybe we should use a nuke. And then meanwhile, like out in the astral plane or whatever, Doctor Strange is just hanging out and he sees like his old master and he's like, oh, hey, what's up? And the master's like, hey, you better get the fuck back over there and make this happen. He's like, well, how am I supposed to read this book? He's like, you'll figure it out. And Doctor Strange is like, oh, I want to just hang out and be chill with my master, but I guess I got to go figure this out first. So then he shows up and now there's like vampire cult guys as well as just like vampires. And then he's like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I can't read this book. I'm not in like a real form or something. And then he sees dun 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 Frank Castle, the Punisher. He's just like blowing his shit out of people. He's not a vampire. So they go and they have like symbiosis and he gets his like cloak back and then we get the Punisher like slash Doctor Strange with his like fucking ridiculous cloak, and he instructs him what to do. And then Punisher just goes and like kills a bunch of shit, kills a bunch of vampire mutants and stuff. Uses all sorts of like Punisher technology and stuff, like the fucking Batman, and like silver for Colossus, like holy silver and all this stuff. And they fight. He gets Juggernaut with like the power of love and friendship and stuff. And then finally he kills his way all the way to Wolverine, and Wolverine's got like giant bat wings and it's time to roll. And then we get like a shonen anime battle between the two of them, shooting and fighting and tossing each other around, and like a holy knife and Wolverine's claws and whatnot. And they just like fight and punch and fight and fight. And then Kitty shows up and Frank just like cuts her head off. And then Wolverine loses it and finally kills Frank. And he's like, ah! And then Doctor Strange is like, it's not Frank's fault. It's your fault. Kitty's dead. And Wolverine's like, oh, it is my fault. And then he like chooses light over darkness because friendship is magic. And so then he goes and grabs a Darkhold and like starts reading the magic spell to kill all vampires, and he like powers through it, and then all the vampires turn to dust. And then Doctor Strange like heads back to hang out with his master. Yeah, that's it. These things are so ridiculous. Anyway, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.